So something that's always fascinated me over the years is how athletes combat father time. How some guys, when they're 35, are completely over the hill, and other athletes are amongst the best players in their sport, competing at an extremely high level. And with LeBron James turning 40, and with the recent Jake Paul-Mike Tyson fight, I thought this video would be especially relevant. And I've always kind of rooted for the older athletes throughout my life, especially my childhood players as they age out of the pros. I'm kind of hold on to their careers for dear life, like holding on to a part of my childhood. So it's just something that I've always kept an eye on. And my theory after following this for a long time and researching is that Father Time treats no two men the same, right? But it prefers the guys who are hyper-disciplined towards their craft, the guys who diet well, recover well, never stop working out, the guys who don't go on long inactive streaks, right? Just kind of common sense. Are there exceptions to this rule? Yes. You'll get John Jones, who's 37, has gone on benders, who's had all kind of career turmoil, but he's still the best heavyweight in the world in the UFC right now, in my opinion. And you look at the Usyk-Tyson Fury fight this past weekend, where Usyk is turning 38 in January, Tyson Fury's 36, and Usyk has just aged far better than Fury. Fury's been an up and down guy, while Usyk is just a steady guy who handles his business 365 days out of the year. And he looks like the best version of himself right now as he turns 38 years old. And I don't think that's a surprise. So for this list, I'm looking at athletes who are approaching the big 4-0. So in their late 30s and then 40 and beyond, what they did. Here are my top 10 athletes, and for this list, I'm kind of looking at how unique and how rare their feats are towards father time. So let me know what you think, and if you enjoyed the video, please feel free to subscribe. Randy Johnson comes in at the 10th spot, playing from 1988 to 2009. He led the MLB in strikeouts from the ages of 35 to 38. And the big unit was a Hall of Famer before he turned 40, but he did not let the big 4-0 slow down the big unit. In 2004, at the age of 40, he once again led the league in strikeouts and actually pitched a perfect game. He had nearly 300 strikeouts, and Randy Johnson would pitch until he was 46 years old. He remains one of the most dominant pitchers in MLB history, and his longevity to the game is unmatched, finishing second in all-time career strikeouts. In the number 9 spot, I'm going to use two guys, Karl Malone and John Stockton. And yes, I know it's two guys for one spot, but it's my list. I can do what I want. Karl Malone played in the NBA from 1985 to 2004, and John Stockton played in the NBA from 1984 to 2003. And because of their longevity, to this day, they are still super high on the NBA all-time leaderboard, with Malone finishing number 3 all-time in scoring, and I believe number 2 by the time he was done. And Stockton is still, to this day, the all-time leader in assists and steals, and I don't see his records being touched in a long time. But Malone averaged 20 points per game from 1986 all the way to 2003 when he was 39 years old. And in his final season with the Lakers at the age of 40, he was still pretty solid. He passed the eye test. He still moved around the court very well, but he averaged 13.2 points per game and 8.7 rebounds per game. Not bad for a 40-year-old. And then, remember, I'm saying on the court, he was still very good. He had his issues off the court, maybe approached Kobe Bryant's wife. We don't love that, but is what it is. And then John Stockton, his scoring never dipped under double figures as the starting point guard for the Utah Jazz as he aged into his 40s, right? He continued to finish top 5 in the league in assists all the way until he was 41 years old in his last NBA game. And Stockton finished 9th in steals in his last season in the NBA at ages 40 to 41, finishing with one more steal than his teammate Karl Malone. They didn't win any championships, but they continued to lead their team to the playoffs late into their careers. And you got to have respect for the way John Stockton and Karl Malone played the game of basketball. I don't respect Karl Malone off the court, but on the court, he played it rather well. And at number 8, Rickey Henderson. Rest in peace to the legend. Rickey is the greatest leadoff hitter in MLB history, in my opinion, leading the MLB in all-time runs scored and stolen bases by far. He played 25 seasons in the MLB from 1979 to 2003 at the age of 39. This man scored 101 runs and led the league in steals with 66. At 40, he scored 89 runs, batted .315, and had 37 steals. And at 41 years old, he had 36 steals. And at 42, he had a solid 25 steals. So this man, in my lifetime, as a kid, I was a baby, had 66 steals. He also had 100-plus steals when my parents were kids, right? His speed and durability is what allowed him to play in the MLB until he was 2004. And his longevity in stealing bases is completely unmatched throughout baseball history. Rest in peace to the legend. And here, if you're wondering how you can have success in a long career, whatever you're doing, here's what Rickey Henderson's secrets were. At number 7, I have Brett Favre, who played in the NFL from 1991 to 2010. And with the damage that man took, that is an unbelievable feat. But he finished his career as an all-time passing touchdown leader. And at the time of retiring, he had the all-time passing yards record. And he still has the record for most consecutive starts at 321 if you include his playoff starts. The man was an Iron Man. He was invincible, seemingly. This was coming at a time where in Brett Favre's mid-30s with the Green Bay Packers, people were questioning whether or not he still had it. They thought he was over the hill. And he came back in his later 30s and had some really strong seasons, and in my opinion, had his best season ever at the age of 40. But before we talk about that age 40 season with the Vikings that upset many Packer fans, let's talk about the 2007-2008 seasons Brett Favre had. In his last season with the Packers at the age of 38, Favre led the Packers to the NFC Championship, where they lost a heartbreaker to the Giants. And I think the circumstances of that game were less than ideal. I think if it was a 30-degree game in Lambeau, I think the Packers win that. But this was a freezing cold game. The Packers had kind of a dink and dunk offense. It was a really effective offense, but they didn't have much of a running game. And you look at the Giants, they had a young quarterback. They had Brandon Jacobs at 6'4", 260 pounds. They had a young Plaxico Burress, a big 6'5" receiver. They were more geared for a super harsh condition game like that. Favre in his late 30s, that just wasn't his game. He was basically an icicle at the end of the game, and he threw an interception. Many people remember that. But I think if it was a normal 20, 30-degree weather, I'm picking the Packers because they had a beautiful offense that season. But he had a really strong year, led them to the NFC Championship. And in 2008, he had a strong year until his injury with the Jets. A lot of people forget this. A lot of people think it was just a disaster with the New York Jets. This man played with a torn bicep. All right, he tore his bicep and he kept playing. They started the season off 8-3, and Favre in that time frame had 20 touchdowns to 12 interceptions, and he had a 6-touchdown performance against the Arizona Cardinals that year. But the bicep injury, that kind of made everything go downhill. But before that, he was looking great, and he was slinging that football. But let's talk about the age 40 season, and that's the reason why Favre's on this list. He passed the eye test that year. That's the biggest thing. He just looked different than any other age 40 quarterback that I've ever seen. And yes, Brady won the MVP at age 40, but I'm telling you, Favre's arm looked as strong as it did when he was 25. He was slinging the pigskin to Sidney Rice, to Bernard Berrien, to Adrian Peterson in the backfield, to Percy Harvin. It looked fantastic, and I think the Vikings had the best team in the NFL. Favre, he didn't only look good chucking the ball 60 yards down the field right on the money, dropping it in the bucket. He was moving well in the pocket and eluding pass rushers really well at that 2009 season. And for me, I think this is the best version we've ever seen of Brett Favre. There are very few quarterbacks in the history of the game I would take over an age 40 Brett Favre quarterback. He passed 4,200 yards that season. He was second in the NFL in touchdown rate. He threw just 7 interceptions, and he led the NFL in interception rate at 1.3%. And a lot of that season is stained by the last game. Once again, the NFC Championship. But Brett Favre was on the best team, in my opinion. And that team was the best because of him. They were missing Brett Favre, and he led them to super high heights. I believe finishing 12-4 or 13-3 on the season. But a lot of you people will remember that last game against the New Orleans Saints. The Vikings, I don't know what their deal was, but they had 6 fumbles in that game, and 3 were recovered by the Saints. And a lot of those fumbles came in the red zone from guys who were not named Brett Favre, like Adrian Peterson, Bernard Berrien, Percy Harvin. Everyone was fumbling the ball. It was ridiculous. If you look at every single statistic outside of those fumbles, the Vikings kicked the Saints' asses. And the Saints could not beat them, in my opinion, without Bountygate. Right? Jonathan Vilma and company concussed Favre multiple times in that game. If you see the shots that they were taking, they were diving also. They were diving low. Favre would have the ball out of his hands for 2 seconds. They would dive at the man's knees. The man was demolished by Bountygate. Favre is the only quarterback, in my opinion, who could have withstood that damage and stayed in the game, and probably was too tough for his own good. He probably should have let the backup in because he could barely make it to the line of scrimmage. There's quotes from the Saints that they're like, hey, we noticed that he could barely make it up to the line of scrimmage, and we took advantage of that. And they made it worse by all the diving into the knees and ankles. His ankle was fried. His brain was fried that game with all the concussions, and he stayed in. And yes, he ultimately threw that interception. If that was a game that was not so dirty, I think the Vikings would win and win the Super Bowl. So overall, Favre had a fantastic season, and it all kind of came crashing down the next season because that game was a straw that broke the camel's back. Favre took a ton of damage throughout his career. For kids who don't know, he would step in there. He was the gunslinger for a reason. He would step in there. You have a 300-pound defender coming out. He would make the throw, take the hits, take a lot of dirty hits over the years, and he kept going. But that game was a straw that broke the camel's back, as he had a rough 2010 season. As you know, the Vikings didn't have this, had a lot of injuries. Their line wasn't the same, but Favre also had ankle surgery. He had tendonitis in his throwing shoulder. He had numbness in his throwing hands. Injuries heading into the next season, and his place significantly declined, and the Vikings were not near the level they were in that 2009 season. In conclusion, Favre's comeback and that legacy in that 2009 season is why he's on that list. He was a Pro Bowler. He was an MVP consideration. He was voted third, but I think he should have won it over Peyton Manning all day. And the reason why he's ranked this high is just, like I said before, the eye test, the looks of it. I've never seen a quarterback at that age have such a strong arm. That dude was just lasering that football into tight windows like he always did, and he did it very efficiently. Minimized turnovers, which he was known for, being the gunslinger. That's why Favre is my number 7 pick on this list. All right, I spent a lot of time on that last one, so I'm going to keep this one a little bit quicker when talking about Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Coming in at the number 6 spot for me, Kareem played 20 seasons in the NBA, all the way until he was 42. And his last game was played in the NBA Finals at an extremely high level against the Detroit Pistons. Yes, the Lakers got roughed up in that series, but they still made it to the NBA Finals, and Kareem had an instrumental part in making it there. All these clips are from those NBA Finals, and he won titles at the ages of 38, 40, and 41. Kareem was super durable and played in almost every single game throughout his career. There weren't a lot of seasons where he played 20, 30 games. It was like 70s and 80s throughout his entire career. And Kareem is now second all-time in scoring behind LeBron James, and he received MVP votes every single year of his career until he was 39 years old. Unbelievable career from Kareem. Number 5, we have Nolan Ryan, the ultimate badass and the MLB's all-time strikeout leader. Yes, Randy Johnson was number 2. Nolan Ryan is number 1. And Nolan Ryan played from 1966 to 1993 and wrapped up his career at 46 years old. From ages 40 to 45, he had a combined ERA of a 3.25. And in 1,200 innings pitched, he had 1,391 strikeouts, where he led the MLB in strikeouts twice in his 40s. And he even threw 2 of his 7 no-hitters after turning 43 years old. He's just remarkable. Coming in at number 4 on the list is big George Foreman. At age 45 years, 9 months, and 26 days, Foreman regained the heavyweight title in 1994, nearly 20 years after losing to Muhammad Ali. This came after a decade-long retirement when he became a minister, right? And he needed more money for a youth center, so he returned the ring and shocked the entire sports world by regaining the title. And despite his age, Big George's power and chin never left him. And his knockout of Michael Moore, a guy who was 26 years old, was one of the most remarkable moments in boxing history. And Moore made the mistake of standing right in front of George Foreman, and George made him pay with a devastating 1-2. And like I said, the power and chin never left George Foreman. Enjoy this quick little montage before we get to number 3 on my list. And at number 3 on the list, I have Jerry Rice. Jerry Rice, playing in the NFL from 1985 to 2004. I don't think anyone's going to be touching his records anytime soon, from his receiving yards record to his receptions record to his receiving touchdowns record. His records are not even really close. No one has come close to touching his records, and I think it's going to stay that way. At the age of 39, Jerry Rice racked up 1,139 receiving yards and 9 touchdowns. At the age of 40, he had 1,211 receiving yards, along with 7 touchdowns, while leading the Oakland Raiders to the Super Bowl. They lost in the Super Bowl, but he was a key reason why they made the Super Bowl in the first place. And he's the only receiver in NFL history to have a 1,000-yard season at the age of 40. And scratch that, Jerry Rice is the only receiver ever to have any production after turning 40 years old. And let me remind you that right now in the NFL, Adam Thielen is the oldest receiver at the age of 34, and he's been decent when healthy at 34 years old. Rice was doing this at 40, and he wasn't done at the age of 40. At 41, he came back and had almost 900 yards for the Oakland Raiders, and then at 42, he had a solid 429 yards and 3 touchdowns, splitting his time between the Seahawks and the Raiders. And just unmatched. His discipline, all the hill sprints he ran is why Jerry Rice was able to hold on for so long. Just unbelievable work ethic. Shout out to Jerry Rice, the greatest receiver of all time in my opinion. And I want to give Terrell Owens a quick shout out because I think T.O. would have been able to do similar stuff to Rice had he not torn his ACL after the 2010 season in the offseason, because in only 14 games, he finished with 983 yards and 9 touchdowns in 2010 when he was 37. So, but that's part of what makes Jerry Rice's accomplishment so amazing, is that he didn't stay healthy. He never had that devastating knee or whatever injury. He stood healthy and did something that no one else, I don't think, will ever do, is have a productive season like that at the age of 40. And at number 2, I have none other than LeBron James. And as much as I like to clown LeBron James, what he's doing right now is unbelievable. Playing in all these games throughout his career, and his body's still holding up really, really well. He spends millions of dollars on his body each and every year, and it's paying dividends. It's showing. And we'll see what he does over the next few years, but I think there's a good chance that he'll surpass my number 1 coming up next. But I got to say, there's actually a lot of hoopers right now in the NBA who are on the older side who are still playing really at a high level, whether it's CP3 at the age of 39, Al Horford at the age of 38, KD at 36, Russ at 36, Steph at 36, Harden at 35, Butler at 35. They're all playing really well. So that era is aging quite well, but none have aged quite like LeBron James. We have not seen a guy move like LeBron James has in his late 30s into his 40s now. It's just incredible. The dude is moving like he's 25. And I'm no LeBron James fan, but I'll give credit to where credit is due. Respect to LeBron for his play on the court. And at number 1, we have Tom Brady. Yes, what he did for the Patriots from the ages of 24 to 42 is nothing short of magical. Like, just incredible. A lot of winning, a lot of success. He won the MVP at the age of 40 with the Patriots. But what I really want to focus on is what Brady did with the Buccaneers at the ages of 43 and 44, combining for 83 touchdowns and just 12 interceptions in those 2 seasons. He led the Buccaneers, obviously, to his 7th ring, to his own 7th ring, but he led the Buccaneers to a title in 2021. And he was also second in MVP voting. After that Super Bowl was played in 2021, he fast forward to the 2021 regular season. He finished second in MVP voting at the age of 44. And he probably could have kept on playing in the NFL, but it was time. You know, his body probably had enough. Probably smart to call it quits. When you're 45, it's probably not fun getting tackled by a 26-year-old, 300-pound man who could probably run a 4.7 40. But shout out to Tom Brady. I don't even have to say much. And we saw recently when he was 46, there's a little video of him running a 40-yard dash faster than he did at the age of 22. So Tom Brady is the greatest of all time as a quarterback, but he's also the greatest of all time, in my opinion, at combating Father Time, followed by LeBron James. Those two, and I'll throw Jerry Rice. I think those, well, and Foreman. Everyone's very impressive on this list, but Tom Brady gets the cake. Let me know what you think of this list, and if you enjoyed the video, make sure to subscribe. I'd greatly appreciate that. I'll have more videos like this coming your way, but let me know where I got it right and where I got it wrong, and I will see you next time.